You will take the precious few seeds you have saved, counting them like gold coins, and you will turn the tired earth. You will plant. You will look at the vast, indifferent sky with a familiar dread tightening in your gut. But you will plant anyway. Why? Because the act of planting is your argument against despair. It is a quiet vote for a future that is not promised, a tomorrow that may never arrive. It is a rebellion measured in seeds, not swords, a defiance written in furrows, not blood. You look at the meager pile that is meant to keep your family alive through the coming winter, through the long, dark, hungry months. And for the first time, you allow yourself to ask the question that has been hiding in the deepest shadow of your heart. Is it enough? Your gaze drifts past the field, past the Lord's orchard, to the dusty track that winds away from the village and disappears into the woods. The truce is with the birds. The peace is with the season. But the road is never truly empty for long, and the wars of men do not follow the patient, predictable cycle of the sun. They follow the whims of pride and greed, forces far more volatile than the hunger of a flock of pigeons. It is the universe reminding you that even the most powerful are made of flesh and blood, vulnerable to a higher justice. You didn't get the grain. You won't eat that pigeon. You are still hungry, and your back still aches. But you received something else, a story, a sign, a sliver of impossible hope that can be sharpened into a weapon against despair. For a moment, you are not a peasant. You are a predator too, feasting on a feeling. But as you stand there, the gnawing hunger in your belly a more powerful sermon than the one falling from the priest's lips, you cannot help but wonder. You look at the stone saints carved into the walls, their faces serene and untroubled. They offer no answers. There is only the priest's booming voice, the pigeons growing fat in your memory, and the terrible, silent question blooming in your heart. Is this a test of your faith, or is it a lie that keeps you on your knees? This is not a strategy. It's an effigy. It's a curse made of wood and straw, an act of defiance that can be dismissed as a prank if a knight ever asks. You look from face to face, illuminated by the guttering candle. You see the deep lines of fatigue, the dirt beneath their fingernails, the hunger in their eyes. But tonight, you see something else, a flicker of conspiracy, a dangerous spark of shared identity. You suddenly understand that community in this age is not just about bringing in the harvest together or celebrating a saint's day. For the Lord, it is a symbol. The tall stone dovecote where they live is a testament to His power, a tower that casts a long shadow over your life, promising fresh meat even in the dead of winter, a luxury built from your hunger. But the real theft is more subtle, a truth that settles in your gut like a cold stone. The true value isn't in the birds' meat or even their eggs. It's in what they leave behind on the stone floor of their tower. Their droppings. Guano. You have lost grain. You have lost hope. You have lost the strength in your arms and the prayer on your lips. You have cursed the birds that are not yours to kill, cursed the Lord who owns them, cursed the God who seems to watch it all in an endless, unbearable silence. And yet, next spring, when the frost finally loosens its grip on the soil, you will do it all again. You will take the old plow, the one your father used, and mend its worn leather. You worked until your hands bled, and for all of it, this is your reward. A few months of thin porridge and gnawing anxiety. You fought for your Lord, but you see now the war was never truly over. It simply changed its shape. The enemy is no longer a man with a sword, but a sky without clouds, a pigeon on the wing, a spot of mold on a stalk of wheat. It is the quiet, relentless arithmetic of subtraction. A life spent giving away more than you keep. You sharpen the blade of your scythe, rewrap the handle of your hoe, patch the worn leather of your shoes, and in mending the tools of your survival, you mend your own spirit. You gather your strength, not to stop the wheel, but to be ready for its next, slow, inexorable turn. You breathe in the peace of this truce, letting it settle deep in your lungs, a reserve of calm for the battle you know is to come. You look out over the vibrant green, a testament to your vigilance. This is the currency of the powerless. These moments are your gold. They are whispers from the natural world that the order of man, the Lord in his hall, the priest in his church, the king on his throne, is not the only order. It's the same feeling that will echo down through the centuries, a deep, satisfying hum in the human soul when a king is humbled, a banker is exposed, a bully finally meets a fist he cannot dodge. It is an act of rebellion that happens entirely within the confines of your own skull, yet it feels as risky as taking up a pitchfork. The world is a cruel and random place, full of sickness, starvation, and sudden death. The church offers a reason for it all, a divine order that promises sense and, eventually, salvation. To doubt that order is to be cast adrift in a sea of meaningless suffering. His gaze flickers to Elspeth's young son, sitting in the corner, pretending to be asleep. The boy's eyelids twitch. He knows his skill with a sling is legendary in the village. This isn't a suggestion, it's an anointment. And a scarecrow, another voice mutters from the shadows, doesn't just have to scare away birds. A low, dangerous chuckle ripples through the small gathering. Give it the bailiff's posture. Use that red wool from the old tunic for its hair. Stuff it with damp straw and pig dung, so it rots from the inside out, just like him. So you just stand there, a scarecrow made of flesh and bone, watching them peck away at the future, at the very bread you hope to bake come autumn. Tonight, in the great hall, the Lord will feast. He'll dine on squab pie, the tender meat of young birds just like these. Birds fattened on your work. They will be roasted with spices you cannot name, served on plates of pewter you will never touch. His guests will laugh, their chins glistening with grease, their minds empty of the cost. For them, it is a meal. You stand there, in the dying light of a life you have lived entirely in the shadow of that stone tower. The air grows cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and the coming dark. Your back aches with the memory of 100 harvests. Your hands are maps of every blister, every splinter, every callus earned in this field. You have fought the war that has no name, the war that history will never record. The forgotten war of the pigeons, a thrumming, feathered cloud that descends every year to steal tomorrow from your children's mouths. This is the deepest debt, the one you owe to a tomorrow that exists only in your desperate imagination. When it is done, you stand back. You look at the 3 great voids on the floor where your labor sat only an hour ago. The Lord's portion, the church's portion, the future's portion, and then you look at what is left, your portion. It sits in the corner of the barn, a pathetic huddle of sacks that look impossibly, terrifyingly small. It is a monument to your powerlessness. You survived the war. You dodged the fevers. It will build machines and philosophies all designed to deny the turning, to create a world of permanent summer, of constant growth. It will live in terror of any downturn, any fall, seeing it as a failure, a catastrophe. You see it as a necessary part of the circle. The downturn is a time to rest. It is a time to sit in the shade of the cottage, the scent of wood smoke and simmering nettles in the air, and mend the tools that were battered in the last fight. It obeys an older, wilder law, the law of hunger, of strength, of the sky. It did what you have dreamed of doing 1,000 times. It took what it wanted. A slow, hot feeling spreads through your chest. It is a fierce and savage joy. You look at the man beside you, his face streaked with dirt, his eyes wide. You see the same forbidden emotion reflected there. A smile you dare not show flickers behind his eyes. It is a secret shared between you, between everyone in the field. A vicarious victory. His church is cold, but his house is warm. He speaks of God's will, but he eats the Lord's meat. A new, more dangerous thought follows the first. Is he speaking God's truth, or is he simply an actor, repeating the lines the Lord pays him to say? The great chain of being, is it a map of the divine, or is it just the heaviest chain of all, shackling you to the stone floor while others feast in the halls above? To even form the question feels like a sin. A silent betrayal of everything you have been taught. No one suggests open revolt. The memory of the last man who did is still fresh, his body left hanging in the gibbet cage on the hill, a feast for the crows he could no longer scare away. The consequences are too swift, too brutal. But other plans, smaller and sharper, are hinted at. Thomas, a young man whose face is still soft with youth, but whose eyes are old with anger, leans forward. A boy with a quick eye, he says, his voice a low growl, and a smooth, heavy riverstone. Can work wonders on a swooping hawk. The rustle is not the wind. It's a frantic, feathered sound, a squabble of wings that makes the hairs on your arms stand up. You look up from the furrow, your back aching with a familiar fire, and see them. Pigeons, not the wild, scrawny kind, but the Lord's birds, fat, arrogant, and descending on your meager patch of grain like a pale, fluttering plague. You can't touch them. To kill one is to lose a hand, or worse. Less visible, perhaps, but their function is the same. The inaccessible legal system, the predatory financial instrument. What are these, if not the new lords? And what are their pigeons, if not the invisible forces that feed on the fields of our lives? You turn for home, the grain sack feeling impossibly light on your shoulder. And you wonder, have the towers really fallen, or have they just learned to cast shadows we can no longer see? This is the ultimate act of faith and the ultimate cruelty. You must starve the present to feed a future that may never arrive. Each handful of seed you pour into the planting sack is a meal your family will not eat. It is the ghost of a loaf, the memory of a stew. You are taking food from the mouths of the living and planting it in the cold, dead earth, praying that this time, the pigeons will stay away, the rains will come, and the mildew will spare you. You know, in your bones, that life is a great heavy wheel, turned by an unseen hand. It lifts you into the light of a good harvest and a full belly. And then, just as surely, it grinds you down into the mud of sickness, hunger, and fear. You do not curse the wheel for turning. You simply learn its speed. You learn to recognize the signs of its descent. Our world, the one that will be built on the dust of your bones, will seek to stop the wheel at its apex. The hawk rises, powerful wing beats lifting it back towards its kingdom of the wind. Clutched in its talons is one of the Lord's fat pigeons, limp and defeated. A puff of gray feathers drifts down, like a soul leaving a body, and lands softly on the soil you have been breaking your back over. No one speaks, no one moves. You all just watch as the predator carries its prize over the tree line, disappearing from view. It is an execution and a liberation all at once. The hawk does not know it is breaking the Lord's law. You feel a flush of heat, a prickle of sweat on your neck. You glance at the faces around you. Old man Hemlock, his face a mask of pious concentration. Elspeth, whose youngest child is thin as a winter branch, her eyes closed in prayer. Do they feel it too? This chasm between the priest's perfect ladder and the brutal reality of your life? Or are you alone in this heresy? You look back at Father Thomas, at his round, well-fed face, at the silver crucifix that glints on his chest. His belly is full. In a world where you cannot raise a hand against your master, you pray for God to do it for you. It's the only justice you can imagine. This is the truth of your world, not found in the sermons at the church or the edicts read by the reeve, but here, in the bitter whispers of the powerless. A shared misery coils around the room, a communal resentment that binds you together, tighter than any kinship. You are all soldiers in a forgotten, undeclared war. A war fought with bowed heads and clenched fists hidden under the table. Its dark, beaded eye finds yours. The law is absolute. To touch it is theft. To take it is a crime against the manor, an act of rebellion. But the stew pot by your hearth is cold and empty. Your child's face is thin. For the first time in a long time, a profound silence falls in your mind. A silence where the priest's warnings and a lifetime of fear used to be. The bird is helpless, and you are hungry. They leave behind a field pockmarked with tiny thefts, a harvest diminished before it has even begun. We no longer have a droit to Columbier. We have torn down the stone towers. Or have we? Have we just learned to build them better, where they cannot be seen? You stare at the distant stone cylinder, and a chilling thought takes root. The algorithm that denies you a chance because of your name. The contract whose language is a locked fortress. The system that drains your future one tiny, legal, unforgivable transaction at a time. They are our modern dovecotes. You watch another portion of your life's work hoisted onto a cart, destined for the great stone tithe barn that looms over the village. A fortress built from the hunger of 100 families like yours. You believe in God, you fear Him, but as the priest's cart creaks away, you can't help but wonder if God truly needs your children's bread more than they do. Now, the most painful cut of all. You turn to what remains. With trembling hands, you begin to portion out the seed for next year's planting. The war was never going to be an endless siege. It was a seasonal anxiety, a predictable fever that breaks with the first flush of summer. This understanding shapes your soul, forging in you a patience that a modern mind would mistake for passivity. It is not passivity. It is a profound and necessary acceptance of the world as it is, a wheel. You do not expect your life to be a straight road, a steady, upward climb towards some distant, sunlit peak of ease and security. That is a fantasy for priests and poets. Others see it too. Hoes fall silent. Breath is held. The world stills. The hawk does not hesitate. It does not ask for permission. It stoops, a line of violence drawn across the sky, a feathered arrow shot by God himself. There is no sound but the rush of air. It plummets into the flock of pigeons, and for a fraction of a second, chaos erupts. Wings beat frantically. The air is a storm of gray and white. Then, as quickly as it began, it is over. They are the Lord's property. To kill one, even to feed your crying child, would mean a fine you cannot pay, or a day in the stocks, or the Lord's justice, which is swift and merciless. These birds, which you are supposedly above, hold dominion over your survival. They eat your future, grain by grain, and grow plump under the protection of the very man the priest says is your natural superior. Is this God's will? The question is a spark in the kindling of your soul, and it is terrifying. For one afternoon of his sport, the word comes out like a shard of glass. A woman named Elspeth, her face pale in the flickering tallow light, makes the sign of the cross. Her lips move in a silent, desperate prayer. You lean closer, catching fragments of her whispered plea. Blessed Saint Francis, who preached to the birds, lead the Lord's winged devils elsewhere, to the cliffs, to the sea. Protect our hens, protect our children. She's not praying for prosperity. She's praying for the Lord's prize-winning hunting falcons to have a fatal accident. It is the Lord's will. It is God's will. But today, the hollow ache in your belly feels older and more true than any sermon. As the light begins to fade, you turn for your cottage, your shoulders slumped with the weight of the day. A flicker of movement. There, in the ditch beside the path, not 20 paces from your door. A single pigeon, its flight broken. It must have faltered on its way back to the great stone fist. It lies in the damp weeds, a frantic puff of feathers, its wing bent at a sick, unnatural angle. You see the ancestor of every system that privatizes profit while socializing loss. It's a quiet revelation that settles not in your mind, but in your gut, cold and heavy as the stone in your hand. The fight is unwinnable because it was never a fair fight. It's an argument where the other man owns the judge, the jury, and the gallows. You finally let the stone drop from your numb fingers. It makes a soft thud in the dirt. The birds, startled by the sound, rise as one, circling again before heading back to the safety of their fortress. This is rent for the right to exist on the land your father worked, and his father before him. You are not paying for the soil. You are paying for the air you breathe upon it. You watch them go, a hollow space growing in your gut. Then comes Father Michael, his robe smelling of incense and old wool. He smiles, a kind but distant expression, and speaks of God's blessings. But God's blessing requires payment. The tithe, 1 sack in every 10. Let his servants be the ones to run themselves ragged, flinging rocks and curses. A truce has been called, not by any proclamation or treaty signed by men in velvet, but by the turning of the earth itself. The season has shifted. Your war is over. For now. This rhythm is the only truth you have ever known. Life is not a story of constant, desperate struggle. It is a pendulum, swinging between crisis and reprieve, between frantic work and watchful stillness. This is a wisdom the soil teaches, a lesson written in sun and frost. So you watch them, these feathered thieves, growing fat on the grain that your own children will only taste if the harvest is good and the Lord is generous. There is a dull, familiar anger coiling in your gut. It is as much a part of you as your own bones. Then it happens. A shadow detaches itself from the vast, indifferent blue. It is not a cloud. It is a point of focused will, a fleck of darkness that grows with impossible speed. You straighten up, your back screaming in protest, your eyes fixed on the sky. They wash over you like the winter rain, and for a moment, you feel solace. But then, a thought, sharp and unwelcome as a shard of glass in your shoe, lodges itself in your mind. Above the fowl, your mind is not on the angels. It is not on the king. It is on the Lord's pigeons. You see them in your mind's eye, hundreds of them, a swirling, cooing cloud that descends upon the fields each dawn. You see their fat, iridescent bodies strutting across the dirt, pecking at the precious seeds you scattered just days before. "A quarter," he rasps, his voice so low it's almost lost in the din. But everyone hears. Everyone is listening. "A quarter of my barley field, gone in a single morning." He isn't speaking to anyone in particular, but to the suffocating air itself. Trampled to mud by their war horses, ripped to shreds by their hounds, chasing a single fat stag. He spits a glob of phlegm onto the dirt floor where it joins the discarded rushes and animal bones. One fine meal for the Lord is a month of hunger for my children. The circle is complete, a perfect seamless loop of wealth and power, and you are standing outside of it forever. The priest tells you this is the order of things willed by God. He speaks of the shepherd and his flock, of the Lord as your protector. But as you watch the shimmering plague descend upon your field, picking your survival from the dirt, you do not feel like a sheep. You feel like the grass the sheep tear from the earth. You look from the birds to the tower, that silent, unblinking fist of stone, a brilliant, subtle, and monstrously cruel piece of social engineering. It turns the very air, the flight of a bird, into an instrument of class, a daily humiliation written against the clouds. The tower's shadow falls across your field long before the sun begins to set, a constant, creeping reminder of your place. It is the idea that the resources of the many, your sweat and soil and sleepless nights, can be legally stolen for the benefit of the few. You look at that stone tower, and suddenly you don't just see a home for birds. You see its soul. He doesn't need to speak of threats. His presence is enough. He walks through your meager piles of threshed grain, his boots scuffing the floorboards. You watch his hands, clean and uncalloused, as he plunges a fist into your best sack, letting the kernels run through his fingers. He nods, not with approval, but with the simple acknowledgement of a debt being paid. His men haul away the Lord's portion, not a tenth, not a quarter, but the best half. They take the plumpest sheaves, the heaviest sacks. This is not a tax. They stand in tentative, hopeful rows, each one a survivor of the great war of the birds. They are strong enough now. Their tender leaves no longer the delicacy the pigeons craved. You can see the enemy, your former tormentors. They are a distant, swirling cloud over the Lord's estate. Their battle now fought among the high branches of his cherry orchard. You watch them descend, a shimmering wave of gray and white, and you feel a sliver of grim satisfaction. Let them feast on the Lord's ripening fruit. The only sounds are the scrape of iron on soil, the heavy breathing of men and women, and the whisper of the wind through the Lord's crops. Everything you see is his. The field, the forest at its edge, the stream that glitters in the distance. Even the pigeons, strutting and cooing as they peck at fallen seeds, are his. To kill one is to steal from him, and theft from a lord is not a simple crime. It is a challenge to the order of the world, an act of rebellion answered with the noose. And you, the priest's voice booms, his eyes sweeping over the silent, upturned faces. You are placed below the Lord, but above the beast of the field, above the ox, above the fowl, above the crawling things of the earth. This is God's sacred order. It is his divine will. It is the architecture of the universe. To question it is to question God himself. The words are meant to be a comfort, a reassurance that you have a place, that your life, with all its hardship, is part of a divine and unshakable plan. You find a space on a crowded bench, the wood worn smooth by generations of weary men. No one greets you with cheer. They just nod, a silent acknowledgement that you too carry the day's wounds. This is not a place for celebration. It's a field hospital for the soul. Across the room, Old Man Hemming cradles his wooden cup as if it holds the last dregs of his hope. His knuckles are white, his face, a roadmap of hard seasons and lost harvests, is contorted in a mask of quiet fury. They are eating your grain, your sweat, your future, transformed by the simple alchemy of power into a delicacy you can only dream of. And it does not end there. The very ground beneath the tower is black and rich with their droppings. Once a season, the Lord's men scrape it clean. They cart away the thick, white paste of guano, the most potent fertilizer known, and spread it across the Lord's own fields, the domain. Your land starves. His grows fat on the waste of the birds who were fattened on your harvest. They took the hand that threw the stone, crushing it in a vice until the bones were gravel. The boy begs by the church now, his right sleeve pinned empty to his shoulder, a living lesson in obedience. The law has a name you cannot pronounce, droit de colombier, the right of the dovecote. For you, it has a simpler name, hunger. You realize, as you stand in the field with the dust on your tongue and the ache in your spine, that the dovecote was never just a building. It is an idea. You remember the endless blue sky of midsummer, beautiful and cruel, as the shoots withered and the earth cracked open like a thirsty mouth. And now, as you bind the last of the sheaves, you can smell it, the faint, sour ghost of mildew, the damp rot that crept in with a single week of unseasonable fog, clinging to the grain that survived everything else. This is not a harvest. It is a reckoning. Back in the village, the threshing floor is a stage for your ruin. The reeve is here, the Lord's man, his face as impassive as a stone. A war for the winter months, for the bread that was not yet baked, for the life that was not yet guaranteed. But today, the sky is just the sky. A vast, placid blue, empty of everything but the sun's warmth. You stand at the edge of the field, and you don't have to look up. The tension that has lived in your shoulders for a month has finally seeped away, leaving behind the dull ache of honest work. Before you, a miracle in 1,000 shades of green. The shoots have broken through. The sun is a hammer on the back of your neck. Your world has shrunk to this single, endless row of barley. The green shoots pushing through dark soil that is not and will never be yours. Your spine is a knotted rope. Your hands are wood, calloused and cracked, gripping the hoe that feels like a permanent extension of your arm. The air is thick with the smell of turned earth and your own sweat. A scent you've known since you were a child. Around you, a dozen other backs are bent in the same symphony of servitude. His words are a mix of familiar vernacular and the holy, impenetrable mystery of Latin. Deus in caelo, God in his heaven. Below him, the choirs of angels, brilliant and terrifying. Below them, the king, anointed by God himself. Below the king, the great lords and barons. And there, far down the chain, but still on it, is your Lord, whose fields you work and whose bread you do not eat. And then he comes to you. The heavy oak door groans shut behind you, sealing out the cold night and sealing in the fug of human warmth and simmering despair. Here in the belly of the village alehouse, the air is a thick, greasy soup. It smells of sour, weak ale, of wet wool steaming by a peat fire, of unwashed bodies and the smoke that stings your eyes more than it warms your skin. This is the only place you can be yourselves, not the Lord's property, not his chattels, but simply people. And tonight, being people is a curse. We are safe in our stone house because you are not. You have done the heartbroken math in your head 100 times. 1,000 pairs of birds, 2,000 feathered appetites. In the deep winter, when your family is boiling scraps of leather to make a thin, ghostly soup, the wind sometimes carries the scent of roosting meat from the manor's great hall. It is the smell of squab, of young pigeons plucked fat and tender from their nests in the tower. The tower is a machine that takes the one thing you have, the grain you grow from the dirt, and transforms it into power and pleasure for a man you see only as a distant figure on a horse. This is the war you can never win. It is a landlord-tenant dispute where one party owns the sky. Your father told you the story of a boy from the next village who, maddened by hunger, killed one of the Lord's birds with a sling. They didn't hang him. That would have been a mercy. The sun is a hammer, and the field is an anvil. Your back screams a prayer for rain that never came, a curse on the heat that baked the soil into brick. The stalks of wheat are thin, whispering of failure as your scythe sings its dry, rasping song. Each swing is a memory. You remember the flutter and coo of the pigeons in the spring, a gray cloud that descended and stole the future before it had even sprouted. The dust has settled. Weeks ago, this small patch of earth was a battlefield, and you, its exhausted soldier. The sky was not the sky. It was a hunting ground, a constant flapping threat. Every shadow that swept over the furrows made you flinch, your hand reaching for a stone, your throat raw from shouting. The enemy was a legion of cooing, fluttering thieves, and the war was for every single seed you had pressed into the soil with a prayer. He sees the bats begin to flicker in the sky, their silent, jagged dance against a bruised purple canvas. He doesn't see them as creatures of the night. He sees them as hunters, just like the birds, just like the Lord's hounds, just like the hunger in his own stomach. Everyone, he thinks, is eating something, and he wonders, as a wolf howls so far away it sounds like the wind moaning in a keyhole. What exactly is eating him? You have the stone floor and your own aching legs. At the front, Father Thomas raises his hands. His voice, unlike yours, is not thin from hunger. It's a rich, rolling sound that fills the nave, a sound nourished by the Lord's own kitchen. His robes are not the color of mud and toil. They are dyed a deep, meaningful crimson, a color you could never afford in a dozen lifetimes. He speaks of the great chain of being, a ladder to God you have heard of every Sunday of your life. It is the eye of the dovecote, the eye of the manor, the eye of a world that does not see you at all. And then it lowers its head and continues to eat. In a world of unwritten obligations and loyalties whispered on the wind, this tower is the clearest contract of all. Its shadow, a long, cool finger, creeps across your strip of land as the sun climbs. But the real shadow is the one that falls across your heart. It is there when you wake. It is there when you pray for your daily bread. And it is there when you lie down at night. The cooing from the hill, a soft, relentless reminder of your place. We eat, it says without a voice, because you toil. The tower stands on the hill overlooking your village, a stone cylinder against the indifferent blue sky. The dovecote, it looks simple, almost rustic, but it is not. It is a weapon. You have never been inside, but you know what it holds. Thousands of nesting holes, a spiraling ladder for the Lord's servants to collect the eggs, the squabs, young pigeons considered a delicacy, and the dung, a potent fertilizer for his private gardens. And you are left wondering, as the warmth of the kitchen fire finally touches your face, which end you are truly closer to. And as you turn back toward the silence of your hut, you can feel its impossible lightness, a weightless presence that somehow changes the balance of everything. He is a tool, a piece of living technology, the most effective thing you have ever created. And as you walk out to bring him home, his small, cold hand finding yours in the twilight, you don't feel the pride of a clever man. You feel the hollow ache of a father who has taught his son that his only value is his ability to be a threat. He looks up at you, his eyes older than his years, and he doesn't ask when he can stop. He asks if he did a good job. The cold of the stone floor seeps through the thin leather of your shoes, a damp chill that promises to settle deep in your bones. It is Sunday. The air in the church is thick with the scent of unwashed wool, wet earth, and the faint, sweet smell of incense that can never quite mask the odor of humanity packed too close together. You stand shoulder to shoulder with your neighbors, a forest of weary bodies, all facing the flickering candlelight of the altar. There are no pews here. Pews are a comfort for the future. You stand in a muddy field, a small boy at your side, and you scream at the sky, hoping against all reason that a few of the thieves will grant you the mercy of taking flight. One bird, fatter than the rest, waddles closer. It stops its pecking and turns its head, fixing you with one black, polished bead of an eye. There is no fear in it. There is no anger. There is only a vast, placid, and complete indifference. You slapped it from his hand so fast and so hard that he cried out, not from the sting, but from the sudden terror he saw in your eyes. You did not have to explain the law. He does not need to know the words, droit de Colombier. He only needs to understand your fear. The Lord's birds are more sacred than your son's hunger. To harm one is to raise your hand against the Lord himself. This is the rule made solid, seeds you sowed with a prayer on your lips. You watch a single bird, fat and arrogant, gobble down a shoot that would have become a stalk of barley. That barley would have become flour. That flour would have become bread to get your family through the lean heart of winter. Now, it is a flutter of wings and a satisfied coo. Your hand clenches around a stone at your feet. The weight of it is tempting, a cold, hard promise of justice. But you don't throw it. You can't. You shift the weight of the firewood, the sharp edges digging in anew, and continue on your way. The sound of the wings fades behind you, but the ammoniac stench seems to have burrowed into your skin. As you approach the great kitchen, a new smell reaches you, rich and savory. The scent of roasting meat, of baking bread, of herbs and spices you cannot name. It is the smell of the world the dovecote serves. For the first time, you understand that the feast and the filth are not separate things. They are two ends of the same animal. You are not sure why you are keeping it. Perhaps it is a prayer for strength. Perhaps it is a seed of rebellion. Or perhaps it is just a quiet admission that even in a life of stark, brutal divisions, some things are too beautiful to hate completely. You touch the spot on your tunic, the slight, hidden bump. It is a piece of the sky, a piece of your enemy, a piece of a story you don't yet understand. The Lord's doves, raised in stone dovecotes, are free to feast on his endless acres. If your son lets the pigeons take even a corner of this field, your daughter will cry from hunger in the night. As the sun sets, casting long, sorrowful shadows across the furrows, you see Liam, a small silhouette against a blood-orange sky. He hasn't moved for an hour. The birds are gone for the night, but he remains, a faithful statue. He is no longer just your son. You look up at the sky, at the birds circling high and free, and they no longer look like hope. They look like a warning. You are passing down the most bitter inheritance of all, the knowledge that your rage is meaningless. Your voice is just noise, and your fight is lost before it ever begins. We think of protest as a modern invention, a thing of signs and slogans, of marches and petitions. But what do you do when the system you live under doesn't even grant you the humanity to be heard? What do you do when your suffering is simply the cost of someone else's comfort? To the handful of precious seeds you and your wife spent all of yesterday sowing, your backs screaming, your hands raw. You can see the dark soil, still damp with dew, a promise of thin porridge in the autumn, a promise those birds are about to eat. You make a fist, a small, useless gesture of flesh and bone, a pathetic echo of the stone fist on the hill. Your son, who is 6, once saw them coming, and with the pure, hot sense of justice only a child possesses, he stooped to pick up a rock. The sound comes first, a soft, liquid burbling from the sky, a sound that should be peaceful but isn't. It's the sound of 1,000 tiny thieves. You look up from the furrow, your back a single searing ache, and you see them. A living cloud, a gray and white whirlwind that circles once, twice, before descending upon your future. They are the Lord's pigeons, and they are eating your life. Each beak is a tiny feathered dagger, plucking the seeds from the earth you so carefully tilled. Seeds you bought with the sale of a sickly calf, but it chips away at the simple, solid wall you had built in your mind between your world and theirs. The world is not a clean story of the powerful and the powerless. It is a tangled, messy engine, fueled by grain and sweat and blood. It is a place where a lord's delicacy creates a mountain of filth, and where the son of a powerful man must drown in it. He is a prisoner of the pigeon, just as you are a prisoner of the plow. The hawk is a killer, but it is also one of God's perfect creations, a master of the sky you will only ever see from below. Slowly, deliberately, You open a fold in the rough wool of your tunic. You slide the feather inside, nestling it against your skin. It is a secret now, a souvenir from a battle you lost, a reminder that even the most powerful things are made of fragile pieces, that a creature of the heavens can still be brought low enough to leave a piece of itself in the dirt. Your conclusion: only a human life, a childhood, can be sacrificed to save the grain. We think of innovation as a bright, modern spark, a flash of genius in a sterile lab. But for you, and for most of humanity throughout history, innovation was just this: the grim calculus of survival. It was the process of finding a new, harder way to stay alive until tomorrow. You are not just a farmer. You are an agricultural scientist fighting a war on two fronts: against the casual hunger of nature and the deliberate, unnatural privilege of the powerful. To take what is theirs is to claim you are something you are not. It is a crime against property, yes, but you see it now in the Reeve's unblinking eyes. It is a far greater crime against the way things are, the unwritten law that says some are born to rule and you were born to obey. You look at the boy, who now seems impossibly small. You think of the taste he described, fear and victory, and you wonder, as the Reeve turns his horse and leaves a silence heavier than any shout, what it tastes like now. He is joining you. He is learning the family trade, and a coldness seeps into your heart that has nothing to do with the wind. You are not fighting birds. You are fighting the natural order of the world. You are shouting at a system that was designed, from its very foundation, to keep you on your knees. And in this moment, looking at your son's valiant, hopeless effort, you realize you are not teaching him to be a man. You are teaching him how to be powerless. A living torrent of gray and white and iridescent purple, a swirling, whipping cyclone of wings that blots out the rising sun. They are beautiful, you have to admit, but it is the terrible beauty of a wildfire or a flood. For a moment, they wheel above the tower, a single unified being, a chaotic cloud with one mind. And you know, with the bleak certainty of a lifetime spent watching, exactly where they are going. They are going to your field. You look from his small, perfect hand to the ancient stone of the distant tower, then back to the foreign things at the end of your own arms. You see the story laid bare: the boy, the man, the stone, a trinity of permanence. There is only one answer you have ever known. There is only one truth to give. And you realize, with a coldness that has nothing to do with the wind, that you are not just teaching him how to survive. You are teaching him how to be buried. And that someone is a boy who in any other circumstance would look straight through you. You see the system not as a ladder, but as a machine. The Reeve's son may be on a higher cog than you, but the cog still turns, and it is still grinding him down, covering him in the system's waste. His privilege does not grant him freedom. It only gives him a more decorated prison, a different kind of foulness to endure. The revelation doesn't make the log on your shoulder any lighter. It doesn't ease the gnawing hunger in your belly. But to marvel at it, that feels like a betrayal of your own anger, of the hen whose life was just extinguished in a flurry of these very same feathers. You are trapped in the contradiction, holding it there in the palm of your hand. The instrument of your oppression is also a thing of exquisite, breathtaking beauty. It is a reminder that the world is not simple. The things that wound you can also be magnificent. You watch him from a distance sometimes, a tiny, lonely figure in a vast sea of green. He doesn't play. He doesn't dream. He just watches. He has learned the language of the clouds, the subtle shift in the wind that signals rain. He knows the precise moment a shadow has stretched far enough to mean the day is half gone. This is not laziness, this abandonment of ingenuity for the simple deployment of a child. It is the brutal endpoint of the scientific method when you have no resources. You have observed, you have hypothesized, you have tested. He lets that image hang in the air, a public agony for all to imagine. Or, for the persistent thief, the loss of the hand that stole. He's not talking about a bird. You understand that now, with a clarity that chills you to the bone. He's talking about order. He's talking about your place. A pigeon is worth more than the moldy bread that will be your ration for a week, not because of its meat, but because of its meaning. It belongs to them. You belong here. There is no line to be crossed, not with an axe on a foreign field for a king you'll never see, but here, in the mud, with shouts and sticks. Your weapons are gestures. Your enemy is a law made of stone and steel and lineage. A small shape appears at your side, startling you. It's your son, barely 7 years old, his face a mask of fierce concentration. He has found his own stick, a twig compared to yours, and he begins to beat it on the ground beside you. A high, reedy shout escapes his lips, a perfect, piercing imitation of your own enraged cry. A round tower of thick, gray stone that stands taller than your cottage, taller than the chapel. It owns the crest of the hill, crowned with a conical slate roof that points to heaven like a warning. A single high opening, a dark mouth in the stone, is its only door. From this mouth, the day's first miracle, or its first curse, is about to be born. You do not have to wait long. They pour out, not as a flock, but as a river. Thomas gives up on the pigeons. He turns and trudges back towards you, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He stops at your side, his breath coming in ragged puffs. He doesn't look at you, but at your hands. He sees the cracks, the scars, the history written there. Then he holds out his own. They are still a boy's hands, smudged with dirt but smooth, the skin unbroken. He looks up and his eyes are terrifyingly clear. "Father," he asks, his voice quiet now, "will my hands look like yours one day?" The sludge plops heavily, a sound of pure disgust. He catches your eye for a fraction of a second, and the look on his face isn't one of superiority. It is a scowl of pure, unadulterated hatred. Not for you, you realize, but for the shovel in his hands, for the stench in his nostrils, for the task he has been given. In that moment, the dovecote transforms in your mind. It is no longer a distant symbol of power. It is a dirty, noisy, stinking building that someone has to clean. The hawk belongs to the Lord. The Lord is God's chosen ruler of this patch of earth. Therefore, this feather is a message, tangled up in hunger and power and faith. A wave of exhaustion washes over you, so profound it makes your knees weak. Hatred is a heavy stone to carry, and you have been carrying it for so long. Hatred for the Lord, for his reeve, for the taxes, for the failed crops, for the sheer grinding toil of being alive. To hate this feather feels like one more burden. Every day, from the moment the sun bleeds over the horizon until it sinks behind the dark teeth of the forest, His post is the small three-legged stool in the center of the field. His job is to be a constant threat. He claps his hands. He shouts until his throat is raw. He throws pebbles that land harmlessly feet away from the birds, but the motion is enough. He is a small boy doing the work of a god, protecting the creation of his family. The Lord's property is his own, his deer, his fish, his rabbits. He pauses, and his eyes drift towards the dovecote on the hill, a white tower full of fluttering, impossible wealth. His pigeons. A murmur goes through the crowd, a rustle of fear. To take one, the reeve continues, his voice devoid of emotion, is to steal from the Lord himself, a crime that will be answered, a fine that will beggar you, a flogging in this very square that will strip the skin from your back. These are the Lord's doves, raised and kept in the great stone dovecote that looms over the village, a tower of privilege that casts a long shadow over your tiny hovel each morning. Every single bird is his property. To harm one is a crime. To kill one, even to feed your starving child, is to risk the stocks, the whip, or the gallows. This is the unwritten law that every bird in the Shire seems to understand better than the peasants. They are a protected class. You are not. This is the only war you will ever fight. The sound comes first. Not thunder, but a sound that lives in the same family. A low, rolling vibration that you feel in your teeth before you hear with your ears. It is the sound of 1,000 throats waking at once, a deep, resonant cooing that spills down the hillside. You are already in the field, the pre-dawn chill seeping through the rags wrapped around your feet, and you look up. You always look up. There it is, the colombier, the dovecote. It is not a house for birds. It is a fortress. It is not the dream of a different life. Hope is the smell of rain after a dry week. It is the sound of your wife's breathing beside you in the dark. It is the small, warm weight of your son's hand in yours. It is a harvest that leaves just enough to survive the winter, after the Lord and the Church have taken their share. These are the only victories possible, small sparks of light in a vast and unchanging darkness. You have learned not to ask for more. To ask for more is to ask for heartbreak. But as the figure straightens his back, turning slightly, your breath catches. It is the reeve's son, a boy barely older than you, who wears better clothes, who carries himself with an inherited arrogance, whose future is as secure as the stone walls around you. But he is not arrogant now. His face is a grim mask of misery, streaked with sweat and grime. His fine wool tunic is stained dark with filth. He holds a heavy wooden shovel, and with a grunt of effort, he heaves a load of the dark, reeking manure into a waiting cart. You think of the priest, his voice echoing in the cold stone of the church, speaking of how every leaf on every tree is a word in God's great book. He says the world is a text to be read, full of signs and portents. What then is this? Is it a warning? A taunt from a demon riding the wind? Or is it simply a feather? Your mind, steeped in a world where the natural and the divine are woven into the same cloth, cannot separate the two. This feather is from a hawk. But you cannot stand here all day. The forge needs tending. The cow needs milking. The fence needs mending. 100 tasks pull you away from this one single vital duty. And so, the real solution presents itself. It is a terrible, necessary innovation born of complete desperation. Your son, Liam, is 8 years old. He should be chasing frogs by the creek or learning to carve a whistle from a reed. Instead, he is your living scarecrow. He simply waits until the work stops, until every face is turned up towards him, pale and anxious in the midday sun. You see the boy from the riverbank, trying to shrink into the wall of his family's hut, his victory from yesterday turning to ash in his mouth. The Reeve doesn't ask questions. He isn't here to investigate. He is here to remind. His voice cuts through the silence, flat and cold as a winter blade. "Let it be known," he proclaims, his gaze sweeping over you, over everyone, seeing nothing but a field of backs to be bent. You stand panting, chest heaving, the stick held like a sword, your heart a wild drum in your ears. And then, with a placid indifference that cuts deeper than any blade, they descend again. Not 5 paces from where they were before. The feasting resumes. The soft, contented cooing returns. They are not afraid of you. Why would they be? They have learned over generations of plunder that they have nothing to fear from your kind. These are not wild birds. This is not a natural disaster. This is a system. This is the law. And it feels like the sky itself is falling, not with rain, but with a quiet, relentless injustice. The seasons turn. The Lord turns. The generations turn. You were born to this plot of land, just as that tower was born to that hill. You will both stand until you crumble, and something else will take your place that looks exactly the same. Your purpose is not to change the landscape. Your purpose is to endure it, to plant the seed, to sharpen the scythe, to pay the tithe, to teach your son the exact shape of his cage so that he too may endure. Hope is not a grand thing. It's the acrid blast of ammonia from years of accumulated droppings, a smell so potent it feels like a weapon. It clings to the air, thick and suffocating. You try to breathe through your mouth, but the taste is just as foul. This is the perfume of privilege, the reek of the Lord's winter feasts. You never imagined that wealth could smell so much like rot. Through the arched doorway of the dovecote, in the dusty, feather-filled gloom, a figure is at work. You expect a servant, some nameless laborer tasked with the foulest jobs. You bring it closer to your eye, and the raw anger in your chest is suddenly complicated by a feeling you cannot name. It is a perfect thing. Each tiny barb locks into the next, creating a surface that is both soft and impossibly strong. The central quill is a marvel, a hollow tube of horn that tapers to a point, designed by God's own hand to cut through the air. You've seen countless feathers from your own chickens, drab, flimsy things. This is different. This is an instrument of power, a piece of engineering more complex than any cathedral spire. They twist in the wind, casting frantic, blinding glints across the tender stalks. For a moment, it seems to work. The birds circle, wary of the strange new suns that have sprouted in the field. But hunger is a greater force than caution. Within the hour, they are back, ignoring the flashes of light as if they were nothing more than captured lightning bugs, their glinting magic utterly useless. The only thing that works, you discover, is you. Your presence. The sight of a human, the sound of a shout, the sudden flight of a thrown stone. He's a hunter, a provider, a king on a throne of straw. It tasted, he says, and his voice drops even lower, a secret that feels dangerous just to hear. It tasted of fear and victory. The next day, a shadow falls over the village. It arrives on horseback, the reeve. He isn't a man you know. He is a position, an extension of the Lord's will, his face carved from the same hard stone as the castle walls. He doesn't dismount. You snatch a fallen branch from the ground, the wood rough and splintery against your palm. You find a large, flat stone at the field's edge and begin to beat the wood against it, a frantic, desperate rhythm with no melody. Thwack, thwack, thwack. It's a prayer hammered out in pure fury. For a moment, it works. The cloud of birds rises as one, their wings making a sound like a tearing sail, a sudden, panicked thunder. They circle high above, a vortex of gray against a sky that promises more rain. They are his feathered army, his winged tax collectors, and they have come for their due. You watch, frozen for a moment in a kind of horrified awe, as hundreds of them land on your freshly sown earth. They are not graceful. They are voracious, pecking and strutting, their iridescent necks glinting with a cruel beauty. Each peck is a hole in your future. Each bird, a fat, feathered thief growing richer on your family's potential survival. You can already feel the hollowness in your stomach, the phantom ache of a hunger that hasn't even begun. He rode through the village last week, draped in new colors, his chin held high as if he'd earned his title through some great deed and not simply by being born in the right bed. The steward read a proclamation. The laws stand. The rents are due. Nothing has changed. A new name, the same boot on your neck. Your world is not a line stretching forward into a better future. That is a fantasy for madmen and saints. Your world is a wheel, greased with sweat and blood, turning on an axle of stone and steel. Turning on an axle of stone and steel. This is a living sound, a contained storm. As you draw closer, the rumble separates into a million distinct noises. The frantic whirring and fluttering of 1,000 pairs of wings. The cooing and panicked calls of birds trapped in a stone drum. It is the sound of 1,000 heartbeats, 1,000 small lives beating against the walls that imprisoned them for the Lord's table. Then the smell arrives. It is a physical blow, a sharp, searing stench that makes your eyes water and the back of your throat burn. It is a piece of the creature that stole your food, a symbol of the man who owns the bird, the land, and in many ways, you. To destroy it would be a small, satisfying vengeance. But your hand, moving as if with its own mind, reaches down. Your fingers, calloused and stained with earth, close around the delicate thing. You lift it. In your palm, it weighs nothing, less than nothing. It feels like a captured breath, a sliver of cloud. You've seen a horse shy from the flash of a dropped buckle. Light, then. Light might be the answer. You take the one precious thing you have with a shine to it, a small tin-plated brooch, a gift to your wife from a time when there was a coin to spare. She gives it back to you without a word, her expression telling you that a full belly is more beautiful than any ornament. You tie it, and other slivers of metal, scavenged from the rubbish heap, to thin poles with strips of rag. He describes the soft thud, a sound so small it was almost swallowed by the wind. A flutter of wings that ended too soon. You can almost feel it with him, the frantic moment of hiding the bird under his rough-spun tunic, its warmth seeping through the cloth, a fading life against his own hammering heart. You picture his family that night, huddled around a meager fire, the forbidden scent of roasting meat filling their tiny hovel for the first time in a month. He looks you in the eye, And for a second, he isn't a boy anymore. It is the small portion you owe the reeve for the right to work this very land. It is the difference between a hard life and an impossible one. You cannot stand here. You cannot watch your family's survival be pecked to pieces by a flock of feathered rats. A roar tears from a place in you that has no words. It is raw, ragged, the sound of a cornered animal. Your legs are churning through the heavy, damp earth, arms waving like a madman's, trying to make your small frame immense, terrifying. Each seed is a meal you didn't eat this winter, a gamble on a summer harvest that will keep you from starving next winter. And then you hear it, a soft whirring, like 1,000 spinning tops that grows into a roar. You look up. The sky is no longer empty. It is filled with a living cloud, a gray, fluttering torrent that swirls and descends. They are not birds of the forest. They are his, the Lord's pigeons, pouring from the dovecote like a plague, a slow, black slug of a thing, crawling from the castle to the chapel. You stood by the road with your cap in your hands, head bowed, not out of grief, but because it was required. You felt nothing. He was a name, a force, a shadow who owned the sky above you and the ground beneath your feet. Now his son is the Lord, a boy you remember chasing dogs in the bailey, his face perpetually smeared with honey. It is a landmark of power, a round stone tower that pierces the sky, more solidly built your own home. A symbol of the Lord's right to keep pigeons, to have fresh meat in the dead of winter while you gnaw on salted pork and dream of spring greens. It is a stone fist raised against the horizon, a constant reminder of the world you serve but do not belong to. The sound hits you first, a low, constant rumble that seems to vibrate from the ground itself. It's not like thunder, which comes and goes. Lying beside a stone your hens use for dusting, there is a single feather. It is long and barred, a tapestry of charcoal gray and cloudy white. It must have been torn loose in the scuffle, a feather from the wing of your tormentor, from the Lord's prized goshawk, the feathered tyrant of this valley. Your first instinct is a flash of fire in your gut. Crush it. Grind it back into the mud it fell on. You called him Jack o' the Field, and as you hoisted him onto his wooden spine, your daughter clapped her hands, certain he would terrify the winged devils. The next morning, you watch as a fat pigeon lands on Jack's outstretched arm, preening its feathers as if perched on the shoulder of an old friend. Your children's faces fall, a mirror of your own sinking heart. The scarecrow is not a guardian, it is a perch. So, you try science, the kind a peasant knows. The science of observation. The boy is a few years older than you, all sharp elbows and hollow cheeks. He finds you by the river, where the mud sucks at your bare feet. He doesn't say hello. He just presses something into your hand. It's a stone, smooth and gray and perfectly weighted, still holding the memory of the current. With this, he whispers, his breath a ghost in the cool air. He shows you how he held the sling, how he spun it once, twice, a prayer whirling in the silence. The sound is a soft, contented war, 1,000 throaty coos rolling over the tender green shoots of your future. You see them from the edge of the field, a shimmering, shifting carpet of gray and iridescent purple, a living blanket smothering the thin promise of barley you coaxed from the soil. They are pigeons, and they are eating everything. A fire, ancient and primal, ignites in your gut. This is not just a crop. It is the bread that will fill your children's mouths through the winter. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. You pull on your tunic, the coarse wool scratching your skin, and step outside into the blue-gray light of dawn. The field, your family's lifeblood, stretches before you. For 3 days, you have turned the soil, your muscles screaming, your hands blistered and raw. Yesterday, with a prayer on your lips and fear in your heart, you sowed the precious grain. Each seed, a tiny, desperate investment in the future. You saved it, guarded it, measured it out from a dwindling supply. Across the field, your son, your Thomas, is a silhouette against the pale sun. He has your wife's hair, the color of straw, but he has your anger. You watch him scoop a clump of dry earth and hurl it into the sky. It explodes into dust, just shy of its target, a chattering gray cloud of pigeons descending on the Lord's dovecote. He screams a curse at them, his young voice cracking with the same helpless fury you felt at his age. The same birds, the same tower, the same stolen grain. You remember the funeral procession for the old Lord. The rough bark of the firewood bites into the cloth on your shoulder, a familiar pain that has become a part of your body's rhythm. Each step toward the manor is a small victory against the weight. The path today is different. A fallen oak blocks the usual route, and the bailiff, with a gesture of impatience, has waved you onto a narrow track that skirts the outbuildings you are meant to ignore. It takes you closer to the dovecote than you have ever been. You know of it, of course. The ringing in your ears finally subsides, replaced by the thumping of your own heart. The sky is empty again, a placid blue that holds no memory of the violence that just tore through it. A smear of red on the coop door is the only testament, that and the frantic, muffled clucking of the survivors. Your hands are shaking, not with cold, but with the aftershock of adrenaline. You stare at the churned-up dirt where the struggle happened, your mind a blank slate of fury and loss. And then you see it. The kind you make with your own hands. You and your 2 small children spent an entire afternoon crafting a man from straw and old wood. You stuffed his limbs with last year's harvest, a sacrifice to protect this year's. His clothes were your own worn-out tunic, smelling of sweat and wood smoke. With a piece of charcoal, you gave him a face, a crude, angry scowl, the mouth a black gash of a permanent shout. You close your fingers around it, feeling its sharp, carefully worked edges. You don't need to look. You know what it is. A poacher's arrowhead, an object whose mere possession could cost you your eyes or your life. He closes his hand over yours, his grip as strong as a root, and for a terrifying second, he does not let go. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. Your back aches from the cot, a simple sack of straw on a wooden frame, and the morning air is thick with the smell of damp earth, wood smoke, and the faint, ever-present scent of human living packed too closely together. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. It is the most stubborn and beautiful form of human resilience. This insane courage to place a tiny, living thing into the ground, knowing the world is full of thieves. The medieval peasant feared the devil's breath on the wind and the Lord's birds in the sky. But they planted in hope. They had to, because in the end, that is all any of us have ever had. The soil remembers, even when the histories forget. The ache is a serpent coiling in the small of your back, a familiar fire that tells you the day is half gone. You straighten slowly, the joints in your spine clicking like worn rosary beads. Your hands, resting on your hips, are no longer your own. They are maps of a life lived in the dirt and the cold. The skin thick as boiled leather, the knuckles swollen, the fingernails permanently edged with the soil that claims you. 30 years. Or is it 40? The numbers blur, meaningless as the passing clouds. The work is the only calendar that matters. Your peace is real, but it is a small, fragile thing, a candle flame in a vast, dark room, and you can already feel a subtle draft. And you pray to a God you're not sure is listening, that no one saw the look on your face. Because in a world owned by one man, joy can be the most dangerous treason of all. The air is still cold, tasting of damp soil and the ghosts of last night's stars. You stand at the edge of the field, your field, a narrow strip of hope carved from a world that wants to take it back. And you hear it, not the gentle coo of a dove, but the frantic, hungry flutter of 100 wings. Pigeons, thieves in gray coats, descending on the green shoots that stand between your family and the long, thin months of winter. They are eating your future, one beakful at a time. You tried magic first. It is a conspiracy of survival. It is a secret society of the oppressed, a network of shared glances and unfinished sentences, all aimed at puncturing the bloated arrogance of the men who own your lives. As the alewife shuffles past to refill a cup, Hemming's gaze locks with yours. The despair in his eyes has been burned away, replaced by something cold and hard as flint. He says nothing. Words are too dangerous. Instead, his gnarled hand slides across the scarred tabletop and pushes something small and heavy into your waiting palm. It's cold against your skin. The Reeve calls it black gold, and he is not wrong. It's the most powerful fertilizer known, a secret alchemy that turns waste into wealth. It enriches the Lord's private gardens, making his vegetables swell and his vineyards heavy with fruit. You watch the birds strip your field, and the sickening cycle clicks into place in your mind with the finality of a lock shutting. Your stolen grain feeds the birds feed the Lord, and the birds' waste, this black gold, feeds the soil that grows the grapes for the wine he will drink. You wake before the sun, but the birds are already awake. It's not the cheerful chirp of a finch that pulls you from the thin blanket of sleep. It is a sound far more ominous, a deep, resonant cooing from the stone tower on the hill, the one that belongs to the Lord, a sound that promises hunger. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages.